Welcome everyone, and hi Ibi, welcome back. Today we'll be working on and contemplating Gene Key 22, very powerful key within the synthesis of awakening, and it has many sort of layers and hidden messages behind this work. And yeah, so we're going to unpack it all, or at least just see what resonates with us to hear today. So yeah, it's the shadow of dishonor, and it goes through grace into the Siddhic and gift realms. And its title is seen as grace under pressure. So to me, that signifies when we are in a state of entanglement or in a space of lack, then we can invite other divine entities into our being for it to show us the way and for things to be transformed ultimately. And as you read the Gene Key 22 in particular, it will show different sort of portals into awakening, and because it's describing what it means to suffer and how to come out of that suffering. And sometimes we need to call on support in the other dimensions that we live in to help us comfort ourselves when these other terrestrial forces come into play. So there is this teaching called the Seven Sacred Seals, and it opens up to 7 different seals with 7 different keys, 7 different wounds, and the divine nature that comes through them as light is seen sort of from a feminine aspect, which helps you dissolve those layers and those shadows so it can bring through the light. And ultimately, grace is something to be deeply accepted, and we use suffering as a means to help for it to come into our lives. So yeah, I don't know if maybe you want to share something from that space. So the wounds that come as a collective into humanity are repression, denial, shame, rejection, guilt, and ultimately separation. And they can also be seen from different lines. So line 1 is repression, line 2 is denial, all the way to line 6, separation. And I also see the line 6, for example, as the inclusiveness of all the other lines, because we as humans, we believe ourselves to be separate. Just even from our physical body, it's something that we can see with our senses. And for most people, they live from this space, thinking their reality is on the outside. And so this gene key in particular holds the treasures or the locks or the seals, in fact, to show you there is something more that's beneath the veil. And this is what happens when you go into the wound, into the sacred wound of life in our bodies. So yeah, I'm just sort of describing the outlook of this of the 22nd gene key. So it holds much in stock. Ibi, do you want me to read something, or would you like to share anything from what's being said so far?
Yes, maybe just to open it a bit more, because this gene key is a very vast one. It's covering this mysterious force of involution. So we have the 55 with the force of evolution, and that is our work with purifying our body and getting out of the victim consciousness into the freedom of the spirit. And on the other side is Gene Key 22nd coming down from the highest of the frequencies, bringing this grace and the healing of the wounds of the world. So it's quite a vast area covered by this key. It's also one of the keys that are part of the Delta program, and it's covering the emotional clarity, the emotional maturity, and how we behave with graciousness in relationships, is the healing of the relationships. And it's also, yes, part of the seven sacred seals. So it's the one that is opening the field of grace, and it's in a way this higher force that if we are working with this higher force and invoking it in a reverent manner and in a prayerful manner, it can work through us, it can work through our aura and transmute these wounded energies and the suffering and bring the grace. So, but just to make it in a way practical, if we think of the shadow frequency, dishonor, what does it mean to dishonor ourselves, and where it starts? It starts actually with the first lie we are telling ourselves in our childhood. And this is when the child learns to smile or to repress. Maybe it just wants to cry or it's very sad, and instead it needs to behave like everything is fine. So something in that moment dies inside, and something is lost, the connection with dishonoring or invalidating what we feel, the feeling. And every feeling is sacred. It's our reaction or avoidance or pain that is actually trying to numb or mask that feeling. And it starts with this, we betraying ourselves and betraying the child inside ourselves just to try to protect ourselves from the pain, or we murder our authenticity and we behave in a different way, and that will appear later on in our workplace, in our relationships. We don't speak from our truth, from what we feel. We mask the feeling, we deny the feeling, we mask under the anger and resentment, or because of the shame, or just to avoid being rejected. So we go through all the wounds and start poisoning our soul, because it's the soul, it's not heard anymore. The voice that is bringing the feeling and this emotional wave that carries the depth of the experience is repressed, is denied, is just used to become something else. And what we lose in that moment is the connection and the contact with our essence. And we start projecting all those unlived and refused emotions onto the others. And we become, in a way, emotional vampires, because it's something that we don't accept in ourselves, we don't honor, and we start seeing it in the others or projecting onto the others. And that creates this feeling of separation, and we lose the right to be whole, or the feeling of wholeness. And yes, so this is what came up right now.
It's almost like we know we have all these wounds that are within us, whether it's from this life cycle or from previous incarnations. It doesn't really matter. The idea is to take responsibility from what comes up. And so we have these different labels or names we've given to them through lines. But if we take it away at its very essence, it's just there to show that, okay, there is something in us, but it's not who we are. And because if it is who we are, then we're seeing the destructive side of it. That's why we see the shadow, because we're dishonoring the true essence of who we are, which is beyond form. And what comes through form in this grace and this spirit of the transmission is something feminine and very soft and very caring and very forgiving. And so the Gene Keys allows us the use of words or energy and portals from what is being shared, whether it's in the book or in its teachings, to know that you can just use these softenings as a way to distill the wounding that's coming up from within. And as you mentioned, it can be repressed, it can be reacted. And so it also is a place where it's coming out from lack of awareness. And so the teachings help show you, grace shows you that you're just parenting it with love to say it's okay if something comes up or the monster within comes up you, like the ego trying to control, destroy, and move away from presence. So this is like allowing yourself to say, I surrender to what is, and that isness is like your true nature, and that's why it's something to just to be cultivated and to give it time by giving yourself more attention on the awareness that's happening within, and then it'll be reflected without you. And so you can use these different wounding patterns to help bring about the transformation. And so you shared the line one of, the repression, the deep repression, meaning the deep fears that we don't want to look into the physical body. The second one of denial is not seeing the blind spots, and you're not aware of the blind spots, so you project that outwards as accusation or anger or blame. And it has more of an emotional connotation. And then we can go through the different layers. Then you have the mental with the shame, a deep wounding pattern that you use to tend to overwork, or overdo something, overcommit to other areas rather than the very area that we need the wounding to show itself, because that's where you're going to find its gift and its treasures. And yeah, we can go through it. The fourth is rejection. So a line four obviously is like the heart space. We've got to go back into the deep heart and its warmth and self-parenthood with patience and gentleness. And then we have the line five with forgiveness, because of the guilt it shares with the collective, with the wounding of its drastic sufferings that's caused on other people. And the forgiveness is being totally accepting of now, the totality of now. And then the line six is the cultivation of all of them by providing this sort of universal loving care to life as one life, and the merging of that. And yeah, so these wounding patterns will keep coming in. And from my experience with the Gene Key 22, it's a it just softens. So the pattern is there, but it softens the heavy load onto you. So, and eventually it will just evaporate. And that just comes through with awareness. And what is awareness? It's just the conscious connection with the unifying intelligence of what is. That's how I define awareness. So you placing your awareness means you are allowing yourself to be responsible for what is in this moment, and that will then cut through what isn't you. And so the wounding, you can sometimes have to use a sword to cut it, like I just shared, or sometimes you need to parent it, create it like a baby. Sometimes you just need to be tactful and let it pass through you, surrender. So there are different ways of how you're going to address the wounding and its makeup. But ultimately, if you place awareness on it, it will influence that wounding to change and to shift. And then you'll find the transformation happens on its own. It's not something that you change, it's something that you deeply imbibe. It gets to a point with grace that you don't mind suffering anymore. You don't mind being depressed. You don't mind struggling because you know it's not who you are. And so you know beneath that there is light that's teaching me or teaching you to transform something.
Yes, I can relate to that very much. And from my experience with, I'm a 6'2" profile, and the sixth line, I can see now how it played out through the lens of the 22nd Jinki and this accountability and the lie and the self-judgment that is the starting point of dishonesty towards ourselves. So when I was very, very young, like I was 3.5, maybe I told this story before in the clubhouse. At the kindergarten, they put a tape on my mouth so I couldn't speak for a whole day. And it was very interesting that the child I was back then learned that I don't have the right to speak and to say what I feel, to express naturally as a child. So I have to withdraw and to look at the other people and try to read what they want me to say and how they want me to behave so that I get their approval. Or when my parents were fighting, the sixth line harmonic with the third line, so the wound of disappointment, I felt very disappointed by the behavior of my parents. And when I went out in the world, I felt the shame. So instead of speaking freely about how the whole situation made me feel, I was covering with this I'm fine, pretending that nothing happened and that everything is all right in my family and the neighbors are not hearing the shoutings or they are not able to know what's inside. And somehow this is what society and how we were raised, that feelings and emotions are in a way the dirty clothes and they are not to be washed in public, or they are not to be expressed in public, but to be kept under the carpet and repressed, or they don't matter. They make you weak or vulnerable, or it is more acceptable the violence that is coming out because it's about this emotional wave, is a very intense inner feeling. And in the moment you are not accepting it, it's becoming violent and aggressive towards yourself. And then you are expressing that out in the world. So this is the moment when the big dishonor is happening. By denying, by dishonoring what we feel. And actually it transforms into bringing and attracting around us and in our relationships those wounds, those people who carry the wounds that are expressing the parts of ourselves that we are not accepting, that we are refusing. So the angry me, the I don't know, the hurt me, the wounded child that I don't honor and I don't listen to, it will appear in my reality again and again in my relationships. And yes, this is always when so for me, for example, this disappointment continued to appear in my intimate relationships. And I was so disappointed by the behavior or the frequency or not reading my mind or what was missing, that I went into isolation. I just ran out of my body and I was not present anymore. I was totally absent. And instead of speaking, instead of telling what is not right, what is not acceptable, what is dishonoring me. And I remember one day when I was really, really feeling very melancholic, that I was looking in the mirror and staring in for the first time in my own eyes and seeing how in a way, I could almost see all the lifetimes and this series of, and even the lineage or the places where I was afraid, I was angry, I was lost, I was confused. So this is a very practical thing to do. Just allow yourself to see in your own eyes and to see yourself in all the possible ways you can express yourself, and you are actually the vessel for the divine to experience itself. And it's not about judging one feeling, one emotion or the other, but to allow them to be felt and to consider it and to look at it with reverence, with sacredness. They are all sacred. And in a way, this is the secret behind suffering is grace, is not that we have to suffer, but the human experience is suffering is the other side of grace, is the same in nature, is the same frequency, but is the shadow. So it's the journey we need to take because we live in time and space to go from suffering to grace. So it is the acceptance of the journey that brings the graciousness and the compassion and the empathy towards suffering of other people and recognizing when they come to you from the wounded part, when they are projecting or making you an injustice or dishonor you because they look at you not as a sacred divine being, but at the level of their pain. And by understanding that is becoming this field of grace, this feminine field of listening and just receiving the other without giving advice, without trying to fix it, just become the space of love and listening and empathy.
Thanks, Ibi. There's nothing for me to add to that. I think it is just more about surrendering, like you shared. So the relationship that you build up or that you let go of means there's no need for addition. There's nothing to add to something. It's just to be aware of, and then that is explored through you as an intelligence. So yeah, thanks again. I don't know if you want to add anything, Ibi, for
it's to honor those things that we consider or label unhonorable, or that they cannot be honored. The ugly parts, or those parts that are violent or aggressive. And through that, we make space for them to be transmuted, to be transformed.
yeah, like forgiving the unforgivable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Forgiving yourself. That's the unforgivable, the most
Yeah,
unforgivable.
yeah. Move yourself out of the way, right?
Yeah.
Great. All right. Thanks, everyone. Until next time.
Yes. Thank you for being here. Bye.